So Magdalena, as you know, you have 15 minutes to present. After your presentation, you'll receive questions by the Commission. You may start.
Good afternoon, classmates and professors. Implementing speaking activities to improve 7th grade students' willingness to communicate in the target language is the name of my piece of research. To put you in context, this was set in a school called Maryland, which is a public subsidized school. It was a 7th grade of 24 students. In the first observation stage, it was noticeable since the first day that students were unwilling to communicate. It wasn't a problem of participation because students participate, but they don't use the target language. To begin, we can define willingness to communicate as a general trait-like tendency to approach or avoid communication, or can be seen as one of the driving forces within learners to look for opportunities for communication in the target language in second language settings. Well, the purpose of this study is to determine how the application of speaking activities may enhance 7th grade students' willingness to communicate in the target language. As the purpose of this study is to observe a change, I decided to frame this research in the critical paradigm, because its purpose is not merely to understand situation and phenomena, but to change them. According to this, my research questions is how may the application of speaking activities enhance 7th grade students' willingness to communicate in the target language. According to this, the general objective corresponds to determine how application of speaking activities enhance 7th grade students' willingness to communicate in the target language. According to this general objective, 4 specific objectives were set. Also, these objectives were set according to Burns 2010 and the 4 steps of an action research, which are plan, act, observe, and reflect. The first objective is to identify student interest, to carry out the planning of the speaking activities through interventions, to analyze the effect of the implementation of the instrument in a student's willingness to communicate, to analyze the result of the implementation of speaking activities in a student's willingness to communicate. The assumptions. What was the expected result of the research before the implementation of the instruments were to students are not afraid of making mistakes, and that students feel confident about the knowledge of the target language. The data collection materials. In first instance, I was going to carry out an interview to students, but then I edit this and I decided to carry out a survey to know students' interest. Why a survey? Because the attraction of a survey lies in its appeal to universality within given 2 different parameters. Interventions, which is the key point of the research, because through this it is aiming to change a reality. Observations, after each intervention, to analyze the effect of the speaking activities. Why observations? Because when collecting data using observational techniques, researchers aim to provide careful descriptions of learners' activities without unduly influencing the events in which the learners are engaged. And to achieve the 4th specific objective, I decided to carry out observations and also a close interview to the English teacher. An interview because the interview has a better control over the title's information received, because the interview can ask specific questions. Application. The survey consisted of 3 multiple choice questions in which the interests of students were asked. The interventions, even though 3 interventions were planned, only 2 could be carried out. And this consisted mostly on games and activities in general in which students can have fun and relax. Observations, which focus on the use of L1, language anxiety, small group activities, and extrinsic motivation. Why this? Because during the first observation stage, I identify these aspects as the aspects that affect students' willingness to communicate. The last observation of the process was focused on the same aspects, and then the interview to the English teacher consisted of 5 closed questions in which he has to choose from 1 to 7, being 1 really bad and 7 really good. The data analysis procedure. The survey was analyzed through pie charts. Each question was analyzed through pie chart, and these were focused on students' interest, entertaining, and how they prefer to work, individually or in groups. As the intervention cannot be analyzed by itself, I decided to carry out observations to observe if there were a change or not. I triangulate observation before intervention and observation after intervention. And these were the common aspects that were observed with a change. As personality factor, represented by anxiety, social factor as group work, and linguistic factor, the use of L1. The interview to the English teacher was analyzed through a graphics. Each question was focused on a topic. The first question was focused on willingness to participate. The second was small group activities. The third one, extrinsic motivation. The fourth one, L1 use. And the last one, language anxiety. Conclusions. After the 2 interventions, I can observe that there were a slight change in students because they tend to show more disposition to participate and to use the target language, even though there were moments in which they come back and use L1. The limited lack of time because of school agenda and activities. I didn't have much time to carry out more intervention. Actually, I planned 3 interventions, and I just could carry out 2. And students' perception was were taken into account in this study. The metacognitive analysis. I was assigned a 4th grade and the learning objective number 4, which states escuchar textos orales y aplicar estrategias para apoyar la comprensión. Por ejemplo, hacer predicciones, hacer conexiones con conocimientos previos, relacionar el texto con imágenes, focalizar la atención en palabras clave. When I read the objective, I imagine myself carrying out activities to prepare students to the listening. For example, getting some activities in which students get to know the vocabulary that is going to be part of the listening. And then performing activities in which students work with the listening, such as comprehension questions, yes or no questions, etc. My strengths, I think, is the use of authentic materials. I think it is important to use authentic materials because students need to know the real context of the language. as Harman says, listening is special too, because spoken language, especially when it is informal, has a number of unique features, including the use of incomplete utterances. Weaknesses, scaffolding. I say scaffolding because to students achieve the objective, they need the necessary scaffolding activities to achieve the objective. And I say scaffolding because sometimes I have problems with realizing how many activities the students need to achieve the objective, or what type of activity do a student need. According to Harvard, also, students need to be made ready to listen. This means that they will need to look at pictures, discuss the topic, or read the questions first. For example, to be in a position to predict what is coming. And challenge, I think it is always a challenge to encourage students to use the language, to use the target language. Because the student may understand the text, may understand the listening, but when the time of producing, they have problems. The more the students are exposed to the target language, the better they will learn it. Thank you.
Thank you.